Just a little bobble forward. Kite cleans up and a chance for the Reds to counterpunch. Sanft puts it on the toe. There's plenty of space that there. Tucker is chasing. And he puts it on the toe. Somehow it's gone through. Ty Tucker is going to score a worldie for Queensland and get them back into the contest.
Hearing from the crowds that you're tough as woodpecker.
Apologising for kicking a drop goal.
Jorgensen, Max Jorgensen, no, he didn't. Oh my goodness me.
Rock's there, Rock. He's got the record.
Tom Wright, just too good. This is ecstasy for Wallabies fans.
Hey there, welcome back to the Scrumbags Rugby Podcast. We are your one-stop shop for everything Aussie rugby. I'm your host, Mitch. Joined, as always, is co-host Lockie. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time and you don't know what that little sting before the intro was, that was co-host extraordinaire Lockie there calling the under-18s Queensland versus New South Wales. What even is it? It's just there's two games they've been playing. It's not a formal competition, but Lockie getting very excited for Queensland Reds scoring a try before the Wallaroos ran away 50-something to very little.
Yeah, oh look, I got a bit excited. I really swallowed that mic like I had at money, Mitch. A rare moment of Queensland excitement in what's been a pretty one-sided series. So 2 legs, home and away in Brisbane and Sydney for the under-18s. That kind of informs a bit of selection ahead for the Australian under-18s that always have 2 games against New Zealand and typically one against Fiji or a schoolboy side later in the year. So look, in our book, war rugby is better, especially when it's up for a scrumbag shield. This time for the junior one, well and truly going the way of the Tahs, who racked up 50 in both games. So comfortable winners there. But it's always fun to get on the mic. I've been really pestering people and making sure that I can get as many games as I can to try and get up there. It's a slippery pole in commentary. I have no idea how far we'll get. And it is I'm always so impressed whenever you hear people on Stan, on 9 minutes on the tests across the ditch, wherever, being a good caller is something that I would love to be. I'm definitely not there yet, and it's a hell of a lot more work than people think.
Credit to yourself. You do a very good job on there, and just go along to rugby.com.au if you're not following them already on socials, because they've been clipping up some of the highlights from those calls, and there's been a few little highlights from Lockie the last few weeks in there as well. So make sure that you are following that, because that's always good fun. Like you were just saying, the Scrumbags shield is very much in your hands, Lockie, but I think the Scrumbags plate is for the under-18s is definitely mine. So I've got my hands on that. I'm not letting that go anytime soon. But the less we talk about the Waratahs at the moment, probably the better. But what we are going to talk about this evening on the podcast is Super Rugby Pacific round 6, was it, that we've got through? Geez, we're getting very close to halfway through the season, and we're actually starting to see at this point in the competition, the ladder is starting to take shape, where we're starting to see who's firming as title contenders, who's making up the numbers, and who's kind of pushing and in the middle of the table there. Should we just start with we'll start on Friday night. We'll go down to the nation's capital where the Brumbies host the Chiefs. If you listen to our extra time coverage on Thursday, apologies that they did come out a little bit later in the week than we normally get, but we've had a big week through work, and Lockie wasn't able to get there on Wednesday. I wasn't able to get there different times, but yeah, we did get that one out with John Ferguson. If you listen to that, you would have heard us talking about James Slipper and his 203rd record-breaking cap for the Brumbies. But more importantly, we were talking about what this game meant for the Brumbies as their season was looming, what they needed to do to get a win. And geez, Lockie, they got the win on the stroke of full time.
Yeah, it was an incredible finish. Brumbies end up 33-24 winners, and no one would have picked it after about an hour. The Chiefs were looking really comfortable after Damien McKenzie went over in the 57th minute. They led 24 points to 7, and against a Chiefs side of that quality and that caliber, you thought, okay, cue in the rack time. Unfortunately, Slips isn't going to get his fairy tale. What the crowd at GIO were treated to was probably my favourite game of the year so far, and especially like the back end of that game. It was just so awesome to see the Brumbies dig deep. They scored a couple of tries that were really opportunistic. I don't think the tries for Ryan Lonergan and Declan Meredith, where it sort of bobbles and is picked up around the side, they're really cheeky. There were tries that really would have stung the Chiefs. And Charlie Cale scores his 8th in 5 games, and impossibly, the Brumbies found themselves up by 2 in the last little while. But I thought it was game, set, match. Damien McKenzie has a chance to ice the game, with 2 minutes remaining, and he misses, which blew my mind. And then what a finale we were treated to.
If you haven't seen it, make sure you do get on to Stan Sports or YouTube or wherever the highlights are and catch those last 30 seconds, if that. Corey Toole gets an intercept with the Chiefs, hold on the Brumbies line, runs full field to score the try, untouched, no one catches him, and dots it down under the posts. And the lovely bit of camera work from Stan Sport shows Slipper calling him home on the sideline, which was great for him in his 203rd test or Super Rugby cap. But I think, look, the result is one. Like, there's so many good things to come out of this competition in this game for the Brumbies. I'm not quite sure exactly where we start with it, but like you highlighted there, the fact that the Brumbies were able to pull out a win when things weren't going their way, when that first 50 minutes really looked like there was a clinic being put on by the Chiefs and the Brumbies were finding it difficult to get into the game. It's very pleasing from a Wallabies perspective and an Australian rugby perspective that the Brumbies were able to turn the momentum back. And you spoke before about how the tries were very opportunistic, but at the same time, like, they were very skillful by the individual players involved. And if it comes down to anything, I think rugby knowledge and gamemanship is so important in a competition like Super Rugby. We'll talk a little bit more about where some teams aren't doing that well, but the Brumbies are. And the knowledge of Meredith and Lonergan together to keep that ball in when they were getting tackled into touch, to go and end up scoring a try from it. Like, I don't think there's a smarter team in Super Rugby at the moment than the Brumbies.
Well, they find ways to win, and that's always kind of been their DNA, right? Like, we're not going to go into a historical breakdown of the Brumbies being, the tough battlers, because they've been too successful to give them that tag. What I love is that they play heads-up rugby. They have the basic set-piece platform with which to go off, but the tries from Meredith and from Lonergan, picking up loose balls around the side, catching the Chiefs napping, those are what you need to be able to do to take down these good Kiwi sides. You're only going to have tiny, limited windows of opportunity in these games against the really big title contenders. The Chiefs are definitely one of them. So the fact that the Brumbies did take them and were the ones to take them, it wasn't the other way around, it speaks volumes of their ability to just hang tough in the game. They made some good decisions late in the piece as well. They were relentless at the breakdown later on, and their defensive line speed and their scrap, particularly in the last 10, once they had that lead and managed to jag that back, that was so impressive. Like, line break after line break, the Chiefs kept going through. Like, Simon Parker busts the line, Luke Jacobson busts the line. It was looking like, for all love and money, even though McKenzie misses a late penalty goal, that the Chiefs were going to break hearts. But I mean, it was such a great finish, and never say die stuff is always the key for the Brumbies.
The other point that's so pleasing about the Brumbies at the moment is they're finding ways to win. Like you were just saying, that even in a game like this where they're getting sort of outfaceted in most aspects of the game, they're still finding ways to get back into the contest. The impact from the bench this week, and it has been a feature of the Brumbies so far this season, but the impact of players coming on, Luke Reimer, incredible. Like, coming off the bench, like that, like you were just saying there, the Chiefs are making these line breaks, and what the Brumbies were doing so well is they didn't panic, and not only were they, getting back and doing the tackles, but they're getting over the ball when the player's isolated in that, and they're getting opportunities, and they're getting pilfers, and they're slowing down the ball. If they're not getting rewarded for the pilfer straight away with a penalty, which they did a number of times, they're just doing enough to slow the ball down, which then starts to falter the Chiefs' attacking speed. And like you just said, they're finding ways to win, which is just it's so exciting to watch. Like, I bet there's lots of people in Australian rugby who watched the first half and thought, no, this is a pretty foregone conclusion. I'm going to go watch something else. And then tune in at the last, maybe check their score later on in the evening and go, oh shit, the Brumbies actually won that. And just one other point I wanted to raise, like, I saw flashed up on the coverage at the end when they're all talking about slips and how great that is and everything. But this is the first time, and I don't know when the last time it was, that the Brumbies have beaten every New Zealand opposition that they've played so far in the season.
Huge stat. Isn't that crazy? So, like, the teams that the Brums have gone down to, they went down to the Drua and they've been down to the Reds. And since then, the other games, they've knocked off, Force first up, and then they go bang, bang against the...
So they've beaten the Crusaders
Across
beaten the Blues
ditch.
and the Chiefs.
Blues and the Chiefs. That's
Hurricanes
huge.
and Highlanders to go to get the trifecta. Or quadfecta, whatever you call it. The full...
The quintet, the full sweep, the flush. Like, it's incredible. And I think what was so exciting about this game, and not just the win, but in the stakes of the Super Rugby ladder so far, like you mentioned, we're 6 rounds in, we're almost at the midway point. It is that sprint style competition. If the Brumbies had dropped that, they swap places with the Chiefs. So the Brumbies go up to 3rd instead. Otherwise, they'd be down to 6th. And you'd have Canes, Blues, and Chiefs in the top 3. It gives so much more credence to the Aussies in the competition now, having the Brumbies and the Reds in the top 4. The Tahs, despite their loss, are still knocking on the door, and it's just the Force who are in the really sort of bottom section. So there's so much more life in the competition after this round in particular for the Aussies. A big part of that's the Reds win too, but it's hats off to the Brumbies. It's hats off to guys like Declan Meredith who keep turning up, playing a full 80. He got over the ball so well. Like, we've sort of talked a bit about him already in his opportunistic play, but he finished up with 2 pilfers, which is not what you'd expect to see from your 10, but he's a physical guy, gets over the ball. Charlie Cale, again, was so good on ball. You mentioned Luke Reimer, Nick Frost, Hudson Crichton, Andy Muirhead. They've got so many people that can put pressure on and get turnovers, and it just means that every single ruck is an opportunity rather than a problem for the Brumbies, and they defended so well.
The stats, the stats go to show it when you actually look at the stats for some of this, and I think the last half an hour probably evens things out a little bit. Before then, the stats were very much in favor of the Chiefs to what the Brumbies were doing. But the Chiefs made 111 ball carries, the Brumbies 121. The Chiefs earned on average 2 points per 22 meter entry, but the Brumbies were getting 3.3. So some of those stats indicate that we'll just keep going through. So tackles made, the Brumbies made 130, the Chiefs made 155. Brumbies beat 17 defenders, Chiefs beat 32. If we're looking at the stats, I actually don't have... I can check the halftime ones, but if you look at the first half, those stats are very much flipped on their head.
I think the best way to use these numbers is just looking at the final 10, Mitch. When the Brumbies somehow wrangled their way into a position to be ahead, they gave up 83% possession in the last 10 minutes and 70% of the territory. So the Chiefs were just hammering away. And the fact that they were able to keep out such a dangerous side that were at full strength as well, they were carving up the Brumbies out wide. Quintu Paya, Damien McKenzie, Coombs Fabling, all the usual suspects. And yet they found a way to win. That's what makes it so special. That's why James Slipper was so overjoyed seeing Corey Toole race away. And for a second there, I thought Damien McKenzie had him. It was a hell of a chase from D-Mac to get back. But, hats off when the fastest man on the field gets an intercept in the last minute. You've had a special game. So could not be more happy.
And one of the things that we're talking about and have been talking about for weeks now is that combination between Declan Meredith and Ryan Lonergan. And both of those players play 80 minutes this week. One of the things that John and I spoke about on our preview podcast last Thursday was the Brumbies needed to make sure that they were close come that 80-minute mark, because if they were chasing the game and they had to bring on Tane Edmund and Clayton Thorne, like we saw the week before against the Drua, there's not a heap of confidence, I don't think, in Australian rugby for seeing those two get a win. Maybe if the Brumbies were ahead or comfortably ahead, they can see off a victory. But to chase the game, it kind of felt like that wasn't maybe a little bit too far for those players where they're currently at in their development. To see, though, that now how the game played out, that the Brumbies get the win and both Meredith and Lonergan play 80 minutes, it does start to ask questions of the setup for the Brumbies. These guys very much are reliant on driving this team around. If one of those guys picks up an injury, it could start to unravel things a little bit for them.
Yeah, it could, but also how good that they're able to play the 80 and play it out. Like, I always find it interesting when you talk about sort of like particularly key backline game driver positions being subbed out. Sometimes, as much as we'd like to get other people on the field, get them developed, make sure they're getting game time, in a game like this, it's so good that Bernie has just gone, nah, Deck's doing a great job out there. We're going to keep him out for the 80. We're going to keep that combination because it paid off. And I think it's probably a pretty scary situation if, Tane Edmonds come on, they've bottled it from there. And this is hypothetical, but Tane Edmonds has not been in a position where he is closing out games or in the same vein of form than Declan Meredith is. There's a reason Deck's starting most of these big ones. And he finishes up with exactly what you want from your 10. He's creating opportunities for people around him. He's scoring tries. And more importantly, he's creating chances further back. It's not always the perfect flush pass for a try, although he did lay on one of those. He's creating line break assists for people, 2 of them in this game. He breaks the line himself. He's a running threat. He finishes up with 2 line breaks. He is a player that can attack from different parts of the field in different ways, and it's really exciting to see him get time in the saddle. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of change in that pecking order unless there's an injury. I think Tane Edmonds probably going to be on the bench for some time if Declan Meredith continues to play.
If those that missed it, Wallabies coach Joe Schmidt was on Rugby Heaven on Thursday, and he was speaking a fair bit about the makeup of who's playing well, the makeup of his squad come later in the year. He's very impressed with what Declan Meredith is doing. And when you look sort of across what all of the other fly halves in Australian rugby are doing, no one else is really commanding a team and leading them around like Declan Meredith at the moment. And that's probably something we haven't seen in Australian rugby for a little while. A really confident 10 who's able to drive his troops around, tell them where they need to be, and then also has the ability to sort of jump in and score freakish tries like we saw this weekend.
Yeah, he's putting himself in a good position. I think that, it really depends on, the transition at a Wallaby level. I think that we're quite likely to see Declan Meredith in a wider Wallaby squad. I would certainly like to see him in the mix. It's great to see a bloke who's done his dues through club rugby, a couple of years in Super. He's a mature age body in his mid-20s. It's certainly a better position than throwing in a raw young kid just on talent. So I would like to see him there. There's a lot more Super to go first before we start tossing out Wallabies jerseys, but people are excited. And Joe Schmidt, he does like to name lots of people typically.
I'm looking at everyone.
Cast a wide net when he's talking about test selection. Exactly. But, there has been pointed focus on Meredith, and it's clear why. He has a lot of potential, I think.
Looking across the rest of the Brumbies 23, who else impressed you in this game?
I was really impressed with Coyotes again. Not the person I thought who would be locking down a wing spot before all the injuries that we knew of at Brumby Land, but he again was really impressive for a smaller frame. I think that 7's background means that he is so dangerous, bouncing out and around defenders. He finished up with 5 tackle busts. I really like what he offers, particularly post-contact for a smaller frame. He drives the legs really hard. He manages to get through the line defensively. He was really solid, and I think that's why he caught my eye, because he didn't miss a tackle from his 8. I thought that was so good from Coyotes. And when they're missing, players like, Corey Toole coming in and out after a couple of injuries, obviously no Tom Wright, Andy Muirhead's position is at fullback now. There is a case for Oates to lock down that wing, and he is making a real fist of it in my opinion. How about you? Who caught your eye?
He for some reason hasn't been able to smash to crack a Brumbies 23 so far this season. It was only the injury last week that saw him get brought up and play the Drua. This week, I don't know what was happening in Brumby Land down in Canberra in training, because they're saying that he wasn't quite match fit and he's not doing enough to earn his spot. But he comes in this week and he makes 13 tackles and doesn't miss a single one. That is That's mind-blowing stats.
He was a beast, and like he has so much to prove as well, right? You know, this whole breakdown of how good Lockie Shaw and Caden Neville were with Toby McPherson coming off, and yes, Frost was being managed around, you know, just some lighter workload stuff. He runs out for the runners a couple of weeks ago, gets tossed in the deep end in a losing game to the Drua. This is his first game back for the Brums this year at home, and he defended like a man possessed. It's great to see him get over the pill. He was making dominant hits, which is really exciting. But again, we see that he has the ability to create opportunities for those around him with his skill set. Line break assist, try assist. He's not just a defensive workhorse and a set piece man. He offers that run that not a lot of people get. And yes, Charlie Cow's still the primary line-out target, but I don't think there's a better person you want to throw to in Australian rugby than Nick Frost on his day. So stoked to see him back in, and it's a great problem for the Brumbies to have, right? You know, once Lockie Shaw's back from illness, one of the, you know, best young guns coming through, as is McPherson, plus Neville is just a big, scary lump of a man who's done it all and seen it all. They have 4 excellent options, and they probably have the best looking depth in Australia by a good foot.
And like that, for those who haven't seen the podcast that Lockie you were on with, actually it was a vlog, what do you even call it? A YouTube video with John at Off the Rock that came out last week, where you went through sort of punters 23 predicted Wallabies teams for that first test in the Nations Championship later on. Nick Frost is another player that was in contention there for that Wallabies 4-5 jersey, and like you said, like he's not been in the Brumbies a fair bit so far this season. So he's playing well, and I'd expect to see him retain that in the next week at least for the Brumbies against the Tahs this coming weekend. But yeah, if he wants to get back into the Wallabies and get that starting 4 or 5 jersey, then he's going to have to be. He's got some strong competition down there in Canberra, which is what you want, which is great. Shift a little bit away from the actual game and players that were playing it. How good was it to see Tom Wright running water for the Brumbies? Yeah.
Oh, how good to see Tom Wright running. You know, we saw a couple of socials earlier in the year of him back at training, moving around a little bit. We're hoping that there's a bit of lateral movement now, given ACLs are so hard to rehab. It takes so much time and patience. But the sight of him being involved up on the dais with the Brumbies boys celebrating Slips 203rd, it warms my heart. I think people very quickly forgot how important he was in that Wallabies setup when he went down in the second South African game. We were not the same team without Tom Wright, pure and simple. We lost that connection at the back, that attacking threat, that second playmaker. The Brumbies have done magnificently without him so far. Andy Muirhead again, pod favourite. You've got to shout him out. He's been so good, but he is not the same threat as Tom Wright. So the sooner we see him back, the better. I would love to see him get at least 3 or 4 games in of Super Rugby regular season to really start driving into finals. It would be such a weapon for the Brumbies to roll out late in the piece.
The fitter the Tom Wright looks, the better, because we need him back on the park as soon as possible. Anything else you wanted to highlight from this game before we move across to the Reds Drua fixture?
No, let's get into it. You know, I'm excited to talk
Queensland
about
Reds go to Fiji and get their first win in Fiji since the inception of Super Rugby Pacific, coming away 21-6. Final score in this one, which was a pretty seesaw game, particularly the first half. I think 7-6 was the halftime score, with the Drua dropping a ball on the line to just not go ahead at Oranges. But the Reds did very well to come back in that second half and to put on a bit of a rugby clinic in Lautoka.
No, it was just guts. There wasn't a lot of, I think, superb highlight moments in there, but they did enough, and they employed a really desperate scrambling defence on their goal line, as evidenced by keeping the Drua tryless at home. I'm not sure if there has ever been a team to keep the Drua tryless in Fiji. I'll have to do a quick stat check after this. I'd wager that it's very, very rare, if not the first time. Of course, for Queensland getting their first ever win in Fiji, massive for Super Rugby Pacific era. But it's the defence for me. They make 168 tackles. They miss a stack of them, but they're throwing themselves at these players, and no one epitomised that better than John Bryant, who topped the tackle count and missed another, I think, 7 or 8 tackles. I think he finished up with 23 or 4, and he just flung himself everywhere. So they knew that they had to shut down the Druid and give them no space. They rushed up, they put pressure on, and ultimately it gave them a position to just frustrate the Druid. And they mentioned on the comms, and you might have seen it too, the crowd was silent. I couldn't believe how quiet it was on the hill at Lautoka, where so many teams go and get buried by the crowd, and that momentum changes. The momentum was never
yeah, and I think that's one thing that's pretty evident from this game is if there's one way to beat the Drua and Fiji, getting that momentum early, scoreboard pressure is a big thing. I think this Drua team, it's gone to show that they're not the most resilient bunch when they go behind, unless it starts to absolutely piss down. Like the Reds were really lucky, I think, with the weather gods we again spoke about in a preview. If it rains, I think Drew will probably get the chockies there with the heat and the humidity, and then the dampness and the ball spilling and all that type of things that come with the wet weather rugby. Dry as a bone there on Saturday afternoon. So the Reds were able to play, and like you said, getting up into the Drua's face and being physical and shutting them down and forcing them into mistakes. That's one way that you can beat this team when you go to Fiji. If you let them get a little bit of a roll on, that crowd is just next level. Like there's no better place in rugby, particularly Super Rugby Pacific, to go and play in front of a crowd. Like that Fiji, that stadium, the Fiji support for their team is just next level. Like they'll run through walls. Their players grow an extra leg or two when they're playing at home and they start to get a roll on.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned running through walls. I think so many people feel like they have to win the physical battle with ball in hand and assert themselves in Fiji to try and take the oomph out of the crowd. But what the Reds were able to do were actually use their short passing game and bisect the draw. They're avoiding the big bodies. And I think while the defence was the highlight for me, the Reds actually attacked really well and probably didn't cash in as many chances as they should have. Hunter Paisami played a really understated role. He finishes with 4 line break assists. His offloading was key to creating space for people around him. We saw something similar from Harry Wilson, Sarah Uru, all the usual suspects, and they created lots of opportunities with their short passing. So that for me was a real highlight. Felipe Dalgunu grew an extra leg, playing back in Fiji. He was so good on both sides of the ball, actually, for the Reds. And I have to tip my hat to Harry McLaughlin-Phillips, who did an excellent job in really tricky conditions, tossed the sort of banana peel game, and he finishes up with a try and a big tick next to his name in the 10 jersey.
For weeks in this podcast that Queensland Reds jersey, that number 10 specifically, is probably the most contested fly half jersey in Australia. Like there's so many options there. Ben Volleyball is available this week. Tommy Liner, when he becomes available, Carter Gordon gets rested, and then Harry McLaughlin-Phillips. So he has pressure on his shoulders to perform well, and to his credit, stood up. I was critical of him in the last few weeks when he had his minutes, didn't do a heap in that first game against the Waratahs, looked a little bit out of place and off the pace a bit. But no, to his credit, like he played really well this week. I must admit, I didn't get to see the full game. I've seen the shorts, the Stan mini match for this one. Did you think Ben Vollevola added to the Reds at all when he came on? He only got 10 minutes.
Not an amount that really excites me. Like it was great to see him, make his. It was his Reds debut, actually. I'm pretty sure. Going in and making that in Fiji is really special. But other people off the bench added a lot more. Again, I'm so impressed with what I'm seeing out of George Blake, who I was very wary of as like a sort of hooker turned loose head prop, but he ended up putting a really good shift in for his half an hour coming off the pine. And I just, like we keep saying his name, but Trayvon Pritchard is so exciting to watch. And he gets half an hour off the pine coming off for Tim Ryan, who did some good things, but the pace and the power behind Trayvon Pritchard, when he gets the ball, he is just a nightmare to defend. He's got lateral movement. He's strong through contact. He finishes up with almost 50 post-contact meters. It's just incredible. And he is 18. He will get bigger. He will get stronger. He will be even more of a handful. It's a terrific problem to have. And a quick shout out, the big, I think the Reds clipped it up, but there was a massive hit up from Vaishilatu off a goal line dropout, and he just shifted bodies. Like, I love seeing that in rugby union. It's a great spectacle that they've added in through the goal line dropout. So great energy, great physicality off the bench. Wirchon continues to do good things. Asiata is always solid. I think we're starting to see a really good 23 that Queensland can put out now. It's not just 15.
Yep.
And of course, Jock Campbell. That's a one that we've buried straight away, but he was really good in his milestone game. Tops the run meters just about, maybe just a touch behind Daungunu. Always doing good things in defence, reads things well, adds a yard of pace. It's he's making a really interesting case for who is the backup around the fullback jersey behind Tom Wright, because we have so many excellent wingers, so many people who could play fullback. What about an out-and-out person who's been there and done that? He's making a really interesting case.
The best spot he could under Les Kiss, who takes over from Joe Schmidt and a few tests
exactly.
for the Wallabies. What did you think about the yellow card that Jock Campbell copped? I thought that was a bit harsh by Dolman.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Those kinds of things are flip a coin in my book. You see him sometimes get the card and not. So I think maybe there's just more attention on him. Get a bit unlucky in your 100th game. He finishes with a yellow card and a yellow cap.
I just thought
so
it was like
not the end of the world.
The call on the field was that he had intentionally slapped the ball down from a line break opportunity. He was pretty clearly going for a pilfer, and the draw player throws the ball into him, and there was no one else around. Like, he would have got the turnover had he not been penalised, like had the draw player not thrown the ball off the deck. So, yeah, I thought it was a bit harsh for a yellow in 10 minutes on the pine.
Yeah, it's gamesmanship, right? Like, it was very well done from Fiji to spot the threat and then flip it to their advantage. I think more often than not, like those kinds of things with the benefit of hindsight and not a baying home crowd, you might get away with that. And yeah, like in Fiji, things are going to go Fiji's way. That's just the way it is in Super Rugby. And Queensland were lucky enough to take the crowd and take the ref out of it.
Anything else you wanted to say about this game as the resident Queensland fan?
Oh, just that.
Is this what 4
Queensland
on the trot?
might never lose again? No. They 4 on the trot is big. Like, that's the first time they won 4 games in a row since 2022. So good signs early. It's the most dominant patch of the Les Kiss era. That was a big concern through the past 2 years, their inability to string lots of good performances together. It sets up a really interesting game next week when they go to Wellington, because that's a different kettle of fish. You're up against the top team in New Zealand. It makes that probably the game of the round next week. So super excited for that.
It's pretty
let's save that for extra time.
When you consider the draw, that however Super Rugby manages to come together and put this draw together every year, because the Reds have only faced one Kiwi team so far, if I'm not mistaken. They've played the Highlanders at home in round 3, and they got the win there, whereas the Brumbies have played 3 and not had a bye yet. Like, far out.
Yeah, it is crazy, because then the Brumbies, like, in the way that the draw is laid out, is that I think the Aussie teams only play the Kiwi teams once and not all of them. So, whereas they have home and away against the Aussies and Fijians, it's it's a 2-hour deep dive episode later on as to the fairness of that kind of layout. But the Brumbies certainly now in a really good position later in the year. The Reds will have some big away games coming up. They've got the Canes, obviously. I'm pretty sure they play possibly the Chiefs away as well. I have to double check that, but I know that they're playing the Crusaders at home. Might have to back me up here, Mitch.
I've got it.
I can see you getting the laptop up and ready to go.
Keep pandering. So next week, keep padding. Next week, the Reds play the Canes, as we said, at Cape Tin in Wellington. And then the following week, the Reds host the Force at home. So that's a good one for them. And then we're into, not quite Super Round just yet, but Reds then host the Crusaders also at home. So some good...
Okay, interesting couple of games coming up. And then, of course, they got the Blues and Super Round. So lots of Kiwi games coming up for the Reds. And, like, I think last year that took a lot of the wind out of their sails. Like there was a tight loss to the Hurricanes at home that really stalled them.
That was extra time, wasn't it?
Lost to the
From memory?
Brumbies,
An extra
scuppered
time
them as
loss
well.
to the Canes?
Was
it?
That was a couple of years ago. There was an extra time loss in Super Round a few years back, but I remember the Canes going to Suncorp and catching them with their pants down. So massive test. I think it doesn't get much bigger than that. And you can't help but get excited. Like we've been teasing a little bit with like the memes and stuff that we do on Scrum Bags, not getting too excited just yet, but you win 4 games in a row, you start getting a little bit hyped, especially when you see that, Brisbane Lions aren't doing so well. Broncos are 1 from 3. Brisbane Roar, we don't even know if they play anymore. Let's start filling Suncorp with Reds games. And, they just tickled a little under 20,000 for that Tahs game. It would be so good to see them roll back in after a win in, Wellington, or even a good performance, and get 20 against the Force. That would be a huge turnout.
Let's move across to the team. The only team this year who's actually beaten the Reds.
It's time.
So I'm sure we could draw the bow that they may be the best
It's a good point.
Team in Super Rugby this year, or what we're about to say is they're very well not that team. Waratahs host the Blues on Saturday night at Allianz Stadium in Sydney. Oh, geez. Where do we start with this one? I attended this game in person. Probably regret it now, to be honest, a little bit. And I think there's going to be a lot of fallout from that for the organisation. It's going to be tough for the Waratahs in the rest of the season now to try and get people to the game, because this game was there for them to win, and they end up losing in the last sort of 2-3 minutes with a losing bonus point. Like the Blues managed to score a winning bonus point at the end there, get away with it 35-20. Halftime, the score was 12-3, was it?
17-8. The Tahs were
but really frustrating night in a lot of facets from the Waratahs. Lockie, you were blogging this one for rugby.com.au. What were your initial thoughts as the impartial Australian rugby fan?
Well, I'm rooting for the Aussie team, as every Aussie is when we play against the Kiwis, but it was so hard in the second half to keep cheering for the Tahs, and we're not here to pile on completely. Well, you might be here to pile on, Mitch, but I just had this sinking feeling after watching them scrap so well to get up 20-8. It was another penalty goal, so they're 2 tries, 2 cons, 2 penalty goals. But I felt they did not have enough from all their dominance in the first half. It was frustrating watching them go over and get held up again and again. It happened at least twice to my count in the first half. A couple of opportunities a little wider late in the first half. Harry Potter just losing control in a scoring opportunity. Jack Debrasini just throwing the ball away when he's 3 meters from the line. Just moments like that where you just go, what is happening? Like the Tahs are doing everything but score. The Blues scramble to within an inch of their life. And I think once the second half rolls out and the Blues start really lifting the pace, it always felt like the Tahs were going to get run down. And that's exactly how it played out. Like we saw, far out. Like it didn't take long, right, for Cody Vi to go over. I think that was the 50-minute mark to get them back into the contest, and it was a really tough watch that
Very
last
much
half. Now,
so let me throw some stats at you. So the first half, the Waratahs, we'll call them, had 63% possession and 71% territory. They had 8 entries into the Blues 22. And they came away on average with 1.8 points. Now, the Blues had 2 entries into the Tahs 22 and came away on average with 4 points. That just goes to show, with that amount of possession, that amount of territory, those many entries into the opposition 22, look, credit to the attacking structures that the Waratahs have put in, that they were able to actually play in the right areas of the field. But that's where the platitudes end. The execution from the players out there in the jerseys on the ground was just not up to Super Rugby level. They went over the try line 4 times in that first half and they scored once. They were awarded it once. So many times that they're just getting close and not able to finish it off. I guess you could start to argue that those close ones, the pick and drive tries where they're getting held up or there's no conclusive evidence for the TMO to award it, that's here or there. But then you you compare that or add on to that they're also dropping balls with a try line an open try line with no one in cover defense. They're setting themselves up to score tries and then just completely dropping the ball or not executing that last pass. It is so frustrating to watch them at the moment because they're doing so much good and then one person just lets everything down.
Yeah, handling was not your friend. And like a very, very quick shout out to how impressive that Blues defense was. Like Peter Arkey, I thought, epitomised what they did in the midfield. He barely touched the footy in attack, but he makes all 13 of his tackles. Sam Darry, 19 without a miss. Dalton Papali'i, 17 without a miss. Like they were so solid defensively. So you got to tip your hats there. But the Waratahs' lack of punch and inability to crack, and they did like 8 line breaks to 5. They were in the attacking 22, as you mentioned, so often, and to not get away with pay, I think, is more composure than skill. They looked rushed. Yes, there was a late change with Tristan Riley out, who was probably their best against the Reds the week prior. So it shifts up the midfield with Lawson Crichton moving into 12, Walton going out to 3. It certainly wasn't Walton's best game in his 50th. And they just like their attack just did not click. It was very frustrating to watch and to concede so many turnovers as well. Like you sort of touched on with the handling, but to cough up the ball 19 times, that's almost once every 4 minutes.
So we don't have a stat for how many of those are actually uncontested or not in contact. But there was a lot of those. There was at least 6 or 7 of those that are just dropped from nothing, like a line break opportunity, player passes, and then they just drop it cold or don't finish it off.
Also, but just their defensive discipline was appalling too. So like they had so much ball and it cost them so dearly at the back end of the game. Like first half was much more even. Obviously they're up. It's 5 penalties to 4, and then discipline went out the window. Like you could see how upset Dan McKellar was in the box as his side gives away 8 penalties to 2 in the second half, and all of them were defensive. All of those were defensive. They're getting rushed behind the ball. It happens at ruck. 4 offside penalties is inexcusable in a half of footy. And yet they kept getting caught behind the line. In fact, they gave away 7 penalties for offside during the game. That is just not acceptable. You can't, and that's stuff because it's stuff that's within your control. It's not pressure from the other team. It's you not getting back behind last man's feet, and that's just shit.
That's right, and not standard. When the Waratahs have played well so far this season, and the opening 2 games of the competition, they looked really good. That win against the Reds, and then that win against the Drua, and I mean you got to take it. It shows now, looking back on it, the opposition they were playing at the time allowed the Waratahs to play well. Now, I'm not saying the Reds are a bad team now, but that round 1, they did not play well. And the Drua came to Sydney and they didn't play well. They didn't pressure the Waratahs. But teams are now pressuring the Waratahs, and this attacking system this defensive system, is not working. Like the players are not sticking to it. They're going away from the script. They're offside. They're shooting up out of the defensive line by themselves. They're leaving holes. They're just not making hits, missing tackles, and they're just allowing teams to apply pressure and turn the ascendancy. One thing that's becoming very evident as a way to beat the Waratahs is to just let them have the ball. And seriously, like the last 2 weeks, did we play the Reds last week? Yeah, in Brisbane.
Yes.
It was pretty evident. And they said in the post-match presser, Kisser and Fraser said they were happy to just let the Waratahs continue to attack and hit the line and just hold the ball, which is what we saw because they knew in the last 15 minutes they backed their fitness and their ability to break the game late, that they would have that surge and be able to win the game. And that's what we saw. The Blues did the exact same thing this week. They allowed the Waratahs to hold the majority of the possession in the first half, the first 50 minutes, let's say, because even that first 10 minutes of the second half, the Waratahs still had a fair bit of possession and still didn't do anything with it. Teams are allowing the Waratahs to just hold the pill, do what they want to do with the ball, try and get over the line and not score points, and then just flip a switch in the 50th, 60th minute and take it to another level, put the pressure back on the Waratahs and watch them crumble.
It can't be a fitness thing. It's got to be mindset, because like all these teams are super fit at this level, but we are seeing a pattern, as you mentioned, that's at least 2 games in a row. It's probably dating back a little bit further. Teams are happy to let the Tahs sort of tire themselves out with ineffective carries and ineffective attack and then burn them on the counterpunch. That's what the Reds did last week. It's what the Blues did so effectively. AJ Lamb's probably the anomaly for the Blues. He was just so good in contact and no one could bring him down. I find it really interesting because you're talking about like the defense wasn't up to scratch, but like I have serious questions around the Tahs attack shape. I know this is something that you mentioned in our chats, but you're not my cat's biggest fan.
They could see our Scrumbags group chat with John Ferguson and Ando in there.
Release the files.
I was just going absolutely off yesterday on the way home from the stadium. That's a book that should be published on the memoirs of a Waratahs fan. It should be called. It's
the woes of a Waratahs fan.
So many questions that come out of this game, and so many frustrations from a fan's perspective. Where do I start? I don't want to go too hard at Dan McKellar. Like I know that a lot of people online are sort of calling for his head and saying like he's had 2 years, the Waratahs haven't improved under him, all of these things. And I said last night in our group chat some pretty harsh things towards him as well as head coach of the Waratahs. But look, he's the head coach of a franchise. He's the head coach of Australia's most resourced franchise. They have the biggest player pool to pull from. They have the most resources. They can go to Phil Waugh and say, hey, we want to sign Antoine Dupont and he wants $5 million a year. And Phil Waugh goes, okay, we'll sack a few journos and we'll make it work. It's fine. You do what you need to do. So like the roster that he put together in the offseason should be performing a lot better than they currently are. And the question is, though, what was the plan with the centres? Joseph Akuso-Suaalii, Joey Walton, George Pullman. That's it. 2 of those. Well, Tristan Riley now was named in centre last week, and then this week was also named as to play centre. And to his credit, he played pretty well. But he gets pulled from the match day 23 late and then causes a whole shuffle. That's happened 2 weeks in a row now, or 3 weeks in a row if you consider the first week where Joseph Akuso-Suaalii goes down in the warm-up. Like, there needs to be questions asked, I think, around is it load management? Is it just preparation throughout the week? Why are the Waratahs getting injuries late in the week that are pulling players out? 3 weeks in a row in the warm-up or like on game day, they're making changes to their 23. That's not happening to any other Australian Super Rugby team. And it's happening to players in key positions.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got enough info to attack the sort of like soft tissue and warm up stuff. It's valid, but what you raised earlier is a more salient point, and that is who decided on this Waratahs list in the back line? Who decided that it is okay to have 3 midfielders in a Super Rugby squad? Like, I remember going through it with you at the start of the year. We went through it with Virgo. We've gone through it with lots of other people around Australian rugby content. And we said there is simply not enough depth. If Suaalii goes down, there's going to be problems. And that's even if it is position. He's now out for another 6 weeks minimum. Riley's gone down. Walton is very clearly not a Super Rugby level 13 yet, if ever.
Well, he won't be.
And they've put themselves into a nasty position.
Like,
no, he won't be.
Before
because
we hit record, it's been revealed that he's off to France next year. So, yep, he's off to France.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, far out. Okay, so now, and then you throw into account the fact that the Tahs lost Jackson Rapata to the Force, who still can't crack it over there. Like, what's doing? And Rapata's a solid player who plays 13.
Who signed off on that?
Well, that's its own kettle of fish, right? That's a whole legal snafu. He's still suing them,
the whole process outside of that, negotiations and everything. But who signs off on him leaving? Like, why are the Waratahs not offering him more money to stay? It's not like they signed someone else to bring in. They signed George Pullman from the Force, who couldn't crack a 23 in Perth. Like, it's
so confusing. Like the Tahs, and like, but they have all the outside backs in the world, they have all the resourcing, and they could not balance a squad. Like, you wouldn't trust them to run a piss up in the brewery at the moment. Like, there are real problems with how they're managing that list, and the chickens are coming home to roost. Of course, I love bashing the Tahs, Mitch. You know this. I'm from Queensland. It's our bread and butter. But it is more frustrating to see this happen when there is so much talent. There's so much talent in that squad, yet they have not made key selections around their game drivers and around their strike weapons and around the balance of their backline. It is just like watching a Barbars squad roll out against the All Blacks and try and have fun. Except at least we know the Barbars could still try.
They can ground balls in the end goal at least, and ground it not on the line.
Yeah. Sorry, there is one silver lining. We got to give him something.
Yes,
Sid Harvey's been great. Sid Harvey's been really, really good, and I wanted to find a good thing to talk about the Tahs, and I can't fault how good he's been, particularly in 2 losing efforts over these past 2 weeks. He moves to fullback.
Yep.
He was excellent, really solid, great off the tee, running for days. Like, he more than tripled the next best carrier for the Tahs. 70 post contact, 142 metres, 13 carries, 6 tackle bucks, 3 line breaks. You've got a good one.
Oh, there is
Can't
one
find
other
any other
positive, and that's the
positives, though.
scrum. Like the front row for the Waratahs, like they're
Oh,
punching
yes.
above their
Oh,
weight.
my God, I've done them dirty.
We wrote
Go.
them off in the preseason and said that these guys are
Yes.
gonna, get pinged all week and all year and get penalised off the park. And to their credit, they're actually holding their weight. They're winning penalties against the scrum feed, and they were probably hard done by. I thought a few times in this that they're actually they were pushing the Blues off their own ball, and the referee calls for a reset or pings them for coming around the corner. It's like, oh, that's harsh.
Yeah, that was bullshit. That was bullshit. They dominated them, and you're right. We didn't give them the credit that they now retrospectively deserve, probably based on reputation. But Lambert, Dobbins, Bota, incredible. They've been so good. They have been a shining light in the Tahs team that has been underperformed certainly in this game as a team. But those 3 have been exceptional every week.
My last point. This is my biggest frustration that pissed me off the most. I was screaming at the team in the stands. They obviously couldn't hear me.
I know where this is going.
Leadership from the Waratahs is just lacking. They are playing dumb rugby. They are a team who does not understand how a Super Rugby season works. And the leadership from Matt Phillip for the last 2 weeks has been piss poor. It is not up to scratch, and I don't know why, but no one is asking the questions in the press conferences. I need to get there and ask what the fuck's going on, because it's killing me. So the Waratahs,
what specifically?
77th minute of the game, the Waratahs are down by 10. They get a penalty against the feed at scrum time with 2 minutes on the clock, 3 minutes on the clock. I think it's 2.5 minutes at that point. Very kickable penalty. Sid Harvey has nailed it from further out earlier in the game. It's nearly centre field. I think it's probably on the 10, just in from the 10-metre line. Kick the penalty, 3 points, bag that. You're within 7, so you get a losing bonus point if the game ends there. They then the Blues will kick off to you, and you've got another crack to try and score a try to win the game. What do the Waratahs do? Take a quick tap, go 4 phases, and then knock it on. The Blues then, from that ensuing scrum, spread it wide, score a try, run full field, and get a winning bonus point. 2 weeks in a row, the Waratahs have had this exact situation. Last week against the Reds, same thing happened. They had a penalty with minutes left on the clock. From in front, could have kicked it to get a losing bonus point. They went to the line. I think they went to the line twice actually last week, and they turned it over both times. And they come away empty-handed. Now, looking at the table, the Waratahs are now in 7th place on 10 points. The Chiefs are in 6th. If the season's called now, the Chiefs go through and play finals. The Waratahs don't. But the Chiefs are on 13 points. If the Waratahs bag both of those bonus points, they're on 12. Like, it's just stupid. It's stupidity. Why are you taking a quick tap with 2 minutes on the clock against a team like the Blues when all of your biggest game-busting, line-breaking players are off the field? Why not even just go to a mall? Why not try that? Like, why take a quick tap? It's just utter stupidity. It's not rugby smarts, and it's so frustrating because these are the decisions that will come back to bite the Waratahs later in the season.
If the Tahs miss finals by 1 or 2 competition points, you'll be doing your absolute nana. And rightly so. Like, it's not just that, it's the fact that they've given the Blues an extra bonus point. That will count later in the piece, especially if they come up against them
And
later on. It's just, they're fighting too. There is time for them to get back. It's not curtains.
Giving that bonus point to the Blues, giving that to them this week, could be the difference between the Brumbies or the Reds playing a home semi-final. So we've fucked all of Australia.
True.
Not
That's
just
true.
New
You've been
South
very
Wales.
selfish down in
Fucking
Sydney.
everyone up. We're sinking the ship with a plug.
Oh God, it's so frustrating. And like, we had our fun. I'll admit, I had my fun on socials in the wake of the Tahs game. With the Brumbies and the Reds winning, and the Force having a nice bye. Like, it would have been so nice to see a sweep, but that was just so emblematic and so reflective of the old Tahs, the nasty Tahs that we've seen over the past few years, who show so much promise at the start of a season and just they're exposed easily midway through and they fall away. I want the Tahs to do well and be strong, because the more competitive Australian sides are better for Super Rugby. We need to see a turnaround. They have an opportunity this coming week against the Brumbies. There's nothing better than Tooley.
Don't get me started. They're not going to
they are
Canberra
under so much
beat
pressure.
the Brums with the current team, unless the Brumbies rest everyone. Like, look, the biggest frustration I have, right, is the Waratahs. Like, it's stupid rugby. Right, I said in our preview on Thursday that the Waratahs are going to get smashed by the Blues. Like, this could be a 50-point drubbing, like the Canes game was. If they get a losing bonus point, I will consider that a win. That's what I said on the pod. And they had it within their grasp and they threw it away. But the thing is, like, people are turning up to watch the Waratahs. Like, people are paying their hard-earned money in an environment where the Tillies are playing the same night in Sydney. They sell that stadium out at a core. I think it was 14,000 was at the Waratahs, which is their lowest number this year. That's not going to improve so far this season at this current point. People are showing up. To their credit, the Tahs scored some good tries in the first half, did some good things. The crowd was with them by halftime. You could tell by the end of the game that they were frustrated. But people who know rugby, people like me, people like you, who are coaches, who play, who are just into rugby, they would be sitting in the crowd knowing that getting a losing bonus point out of this game is a win. That's coming away with something, and the players throw it away. Like, it's disrespectful to the coaching staff. It's disrespectful to the paying fans. It's just, it just boggles my mind. Why would you do that? And 2 weeks in a row, like, you're throwing away your season when you've got probably the best roster you've had in years. You're throwing away your opportunities. You're not showing up. You're not performing. And I don't know. It's just so frustrating. Like, if they go down, if the roles are reversed, say, if the Blues are playing really, really well and the Waratahs come back late and get a losing bonus point, where we go, well, geez, at least they got a bonus point. Like, to their credit, they were getting pumped and they came back into it. The Waratahs were up. What was it? 17-8? 20-8 at halftime, and it could have been 30-something with the amount of tries that they botched. Like, they should have won that game. A good Super Rugby team wins that. Frustrating.
Yeah, it was super frustrating. And like, it's funny you mentioned the crowd. Like, that is a lot of people to turn up when there's so much on in Sydney that night. Like, you have an NBL grand final going on with the Sydney Kings playing. You have a Rabbitohs Tigers game. You have the Asian Cup final with 74,000 in the house, and still 14,000 people turn up to Allianz. You've got to put in a better performance than that.
Just take the 3. And even in the first half, like,
take the 3.
Even in the first half, the Waratahs went to scrum like 3 or 4 times in a row and turned it over each time, didn't get over the line, didn't score tries, still had full-on penalty advantage. Take the 3. Scoreboard pressure wins games. It's not about how many penalties you get at the end of the game. This isn't soccer. Yep. You have to score more points on the board. Kick the 3. You've got a player like Sid Harvey who can kick it from anywhere. Sorry. Take the 3.
Yeah.
Phil Wall, my resume is coming on Monday. Give me the job.
I'm glad. List manager at the Tahs, Mitch Foster. Wouldn't we love to see it? God. We've already got an hour, Mitch. I think that was very therapeutic. That was a very therapeutic moment to get out a bit of Tahs frustration. Very quickly around the traps. Hurricanes go top of the table after pumping the Highlanders, who scored the first try and then basically just folded. Hurricanes 50,
They scored a try and then went for
7 if you
showers.
had Finianganofo. Yeah, it felt like it. Finianganofo on your fantasy team is a big win. Similar sort of runaway for the Crusaders, who pulled away from Moana Pacifica to run at 50 points to 21. Those were the sort of Kiwi derbies going on. I don't think any real surprises there, except maybe the margin of the Highlanders Hurricanes game. The Canes are
It's
looking
good to see they're actually pumping the teams on the second half of the table. Like, that's one thing that we've sort of spoken about earlier in the year, is that if you're a title contender and you want to be playing finals this year, it's not good enough to win by a try or two against teams that are the bottom half of the table. We need to see thrashings. And to their credit, they did that. So, like a few weeks ago where the Canes play the Force and the Force nearly get a losing bonus point, like, to their credit, the Canes didn't look like they got out of second gear, really, cruised home. But like, they should have won that by a fair few points more. So they've done that. Both them and the Crusaders have put their opposition to the sword, scoring 50 points. Like, to score 50 plus points in a game of rugby, like that doesn't happen often.
Yeah, and like, again, we've seen the past couple of weeks and through this season, very few people taking threes. Would have been nice for the Tahs the other day, but it is a real trend that the pace of the game is staying because of the additional law variations. Fatigue builds quicker in bigger bodies, create space for people around them. So a lot of points in the second half of games, which is super exciting. Mitch, we've probably hit our time threshold or close to it. Is there anything else that you want to raise
not Super Rugby
for this week?
Pacific related, but we do have the Wallaroos' first test of the year coming on Friday night against Fijiana.
Yes, we do.
Now, this one is being played at GIO Stadium. It's a doubleheader with the Force. No, not the Force. What am I saying? It's a doubleheader with the Brumbies hosting the Waratahs later on Friday night. So I believe kickoff something like 5:30 local time in Canberra for this one. So it's a bit of an early one, which makes it hard for people who are working. But if you can, get in front of Stan Sports, because the Wallaroos have a massive year in the lead up to their WXV. Do we even know if they're 1 or 2 yet? WXV 1 or WXV 2?
Are they in WXV?
Right.
Oh my goodness. No, it's not determined yet, I don't think.
Pack 4.
Because that's determined by Pack 4.
So they've got a massive year ahead. And just for those rugby people that are interested, just not even so much from an Australian perspective or a Wallaroos perspective, but the Wallaroos are following the proposed world calendar schedule, which is why they're starting their season in March, which is, backwards from what the Wallaroos have ever done before. The Wallabies never play games this early in the season. So what has been spoken about in World Rugby is that alignment of the global calendar, which would see the Rugby Championship being played sort of late January, early February, to align with the Six Nations, which is kind of what the women's game is doing now. So the Wallaroos will play their tests now. They'll start the Pack 4 series. This is a test part of that, Lockie, against Fijiana?
No, this is the Fiji, not part of Pack 4, but this is like we always play for the Vivale Bowl whenever the men and women play. And obviously the women's event is an annual test. So very exciting for them. This launches their season. And there's a little bit of time until the next next couple of games. I think if you look at the
next one will be
the Wallaroos fixtures, the next one isn't until April, 11th of April for Pack 4. So they are starting quite early.
Anzac Day fixture with the Black Ferns as well, which is the second. Is it the second test of the O'Reilly
up at Sunny Coast
Cup? First one.
No, that'll be the first one. So actually, this is a good opportunity to give a quick overview of the women's calendar, because it has really crept up on us. And obviously we're talking Super, that's front of mind. But because of this early start, we want to make sure that people are getting around the Wallaroos. So 27th of March, obviously this Friday, I think kickoff at 5 o'clock, maybe 4:55 daylight time. Yep, so very early, makes it tough for work. But if you can get down, do get down. Then that feeds in 2 weeks later, Pack 4 begins. So the Wallaroos are over. They play both games against the Northern Hemisphere opponents in the States, I think in Sacramento from memory. They play Canada first, who are coming off an amazing World Cup campaign, and then against the States. That'll be a huge rematch after the draw at the World Cup last year that got us through. And then back for the Anzac Day test at Sunshine Coast Stadium against the Black Ferns. So pretty daunting couple of tests ahead with no Super Rugby to back up from. It's going to be an interesting time for the Wallaroos, especially, they've still got Sam Needs, who's the interim coach. They are saying that they're searching far and wide for a new head coach after Joe Yapp's returned. We just don't know a lot about the Wallaroos. We haven't seen a heap. The only person that I think we really get consistent Wallaroos news from is probably Nath Williamson out of rugby.com. No one else is churning out news for it. So, bit of a pitchfork moment for rugby journalists out there who are getting paid to cover the game. Remember, men and women play the game. So let's see some Rouge news. It would be really exciting to generate a bit more hype outside of just the one-man army that is Port Nath.
Yeah, so they play Fijiana on Friday night, like Lockie was saying. The squad that they've named now, Lockie did have Nath Williamson on extra time a few weeks ago to go through that squad. So if you haven't tuned into that or you're not subscribing yet, do subscribe. It's only a few bucks a month to support the pod and get some extra content throughout the week into your feed. So go back and listen to that. There's some big names out for the Wallaroos. Some names moved across over into the NRLW, as much as we don't like to talk about it, but Lane Morgan's over there, Bella McKenzie, and who's the other one? Tatum Bird. Yeah.
Tatum Bird out of the Tahs, who hasn't been capped yet, but she's gone across. Lots of new faces. If you missed out on our extra time one, new faces in the squad. Dylan Blackburn, Lily Bone, Sid Taylor and Piper Simons have come across from the Sevens program, which is really interesting. It's looking like Piper Simons is going to be the new Wallaroos number 9 if she can take that crown off Sam Wood. Also really exciting to see Ava Warretta coming out of Gold Coast Sevens, really exciting prospect. Brooklyn Teki Joyce is solid. Britt Merlo you've seen plenty of at the Waratahs as well as a hooker. She's been consistent. And Ella Ryan, who's been floating around for a while now with the Brumbies. She looks like she's moving into more of a midfield role after being touted as a 9 or potentially a 10. So could be an answer there in the midfield too. Still no Charlotte Caslick, obviously, as she's getting ready to welcome her bub into the world, which is super exciting for her. Another pregnancy with Biola Dawa as well. So there's a few people out for an extended patch for maternity. So that's super exciting. Right. But opportunities for new players. Yep. And of course, Caitlin Hulse
is not
Ash Masters
fit yet. She's had her first, I think, this weekend, her first return to rugby after a pretty injury-ravaged pre-season. So the coaching staff have decided to just give her some time to get her body right before they bring her in later in the competition, hopefully. And Ash Masters is just taking some time away from the game to hopefully get her body right, and then will return at a later date as well. Maybe Super W, I've heard she's looking at a return for. So maybe not Wallaroos in this first chunk of the season, but a return for the Western Force later in the year.
Yeah, so much opportunity in this this little block for the Wallaroos. It's like every post-World Cup section, right? There is going to be change and turnover. There is still a lot of experience there with players like Eva Kapani around the mix, Caitlin Leaney, Mac Leonard, Piper Duck, M. Chance. There's a lot of people that have been a core of the past 2 World Cups. Yeah, Pesi Palu, Maya Stewart, George Friedrichs, Ceci Smith, Talakai, so like stacks of players that have been around the traps now. But for me, this is a really exciting year. There's so much unknown about who comes in as the next coach, who's going to stamp themselves as the team and the players to lead a team through to the home World Cup. It's not that far away. Like you blink and you miss it. 2029, we have a home World Cup for our women in Australia. I'm super excited to see what the core of that team will be, and 2026 plays a big role in determining
It's a little frustrating that Rugby Australia hasn't got their coaching setup sorted by now, because very well these tests could end up just being a bit of cannon fodder. If we get a new... That's right.
Well, and you need to win Pack 4 too. Like, we'll not necessarily take the whole thing, but we don't want to be in WXV2. You know, it was great for us to win it in South Africa, but ultimately these girls want to be playing against the best. We want to be playing England. We want to be playing France. We want to be throwing ourselves at the top opponents to be prepared to not just compete in the home World Cup, but to go deep. We'd love to make a semi-final. We'd love to get past that quarterfinal buffer, and the more high-quality games that we're playing, the better.
It's never great prep to have a coach come in midway through a season and to have a few tests first to kind of do one thing with one coach and then bring someone else in who has completely new structures, setups and things. And I couldn't think of a men's team that's doing something similar, also wearing the same jersey. So Rugby Australia, sort your shit out, because it's not great to have 2 coaches coming in midway through a season.
This has just turned into a dump fest. We're losing
Let's call
the
it
plot
then.
here.
Before we get cancelled next week and lose all of our media accreditation, everything. Thanks everyone for getting to this part of the podcast. I apologise if things got a bit heavy there for the Waratahs, but I'm sure the Waratahs fans also needed to hear that because I can see online there's a lot of frustration out there, a lot of people tuning off. So don't give up on them yet, but we hear you, I feel it, and if nothing else, tune into the Reds because they're on an upward trajectory at the moment. Reds and Brumbies flying the flag for Australian rugby at the moment. Lockie, thanks for joining me this week. We'll be back on Wednesday or Thursday, hopefully, with our extra time coverage. And then we've got a whole nother round of Super Rugby Pacific next week.
Pumped, looking forward to it. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you later. Bye.
We're not going to France for the croissants.